How's everybody doing? I've thought a great deal today about my sort of conflicting views. Well, not necessarily conflicting, but essentially split opinions on the Democratic Party and the Republican Party. Now, the Democratic Party, as it is today, has essentially duped African Americans as an ethnic group into believing that it still holds on to the civil rights policies it embedded within American culture and American society back in the 1960s under the administrations of President Kennedy and President Johnson. Those are obviously two Democrats that I, for the most part, have some level of respect to. I highly admire President Kennedy, and I give President Johnson credit where credit is due. And even in not identifying as a member of that party and sort of getting closer and closer to the Republican Party as time is going on and just feeling more at home with conservatism, and I have those views when it comes to policies that are not social. When it comes to social issues, I'm a libertarian, but that's besides the point. I thought about Biden, who we all know is the current vice president, his last year, or his last few months rather, and there are so many conflicting views about him, but there's this growing, or there's been this sustained public sympathy for him, especially in the light of the passing of Beau Biden this past year, back in May. Now, he's someone who I use as a primary example of just having this liking by both Democrats and Republicans. And there's a good reason for that. And I think there's a really good reason for why you have someone like Joe Lieberman, who, modern Democrats might not enjoy as much as they did Al Gore, but Republicans are certainly warming up to because of his stances on issues. And really, when it comes down to it, I've thought about the reactions I've seen from both sides. I've seen candidates on the Democratic side and the Republican side be praised and badmouthed by different types of people. And there's no candidate that's ever run for elected office that the second I see some material by them, I just get into this kind of disillusioned, disenchanted, ranting and raving attitude about. There's no one of that nature that's ever run for any office, as far as just out of all of the people I've seen run for office, and I've seen quite a bit. Even things that were before my time, before I was born, I'm well aware of. They don't arouse my dislike to the point where I just look at them and I get so angry and so horrified and just start ranting and raving about them. Because at the end of the day, they're just a person like you and me. They have no say over most things I do. So it just seems as if people have a hard time grasping that. If you're a Democrat, you have to like all Democrats, kind of like any Republicans, which that's been proven false as something that people realistically stick to, since we saw how much rate. I'll tell you like it is. That 1980 and the 1980 and 1984 presidential elections were not won by Reagan simply because conservatives and independents voted for him. Carter and Mondale did not succeed in even attracting the majority of their own party. I don't care what any poll says. He would not have won all of those states if people weren't crossing over for him. It's as simple as that. You get all the independents in the world, but he would not have won that many states if it was just all Republicans and independents voting for him. It was a coalition of voters. And it just goes back to him saying that these parties have people within them who are so close-minded about And again, I know Democrats are going to vote for Democrats, Republicans are going to vote for Republicans. But does it have to be on every single circumstance? I know plenty of Democrats who are members of my own family, which is primarily Democratic. And they'll be the first ones to say they back John Kasich. They support John Kasich. They think he's a good man. They think he'd make a great president. They're aware of his legislative history, and they are impressed by him. And they're fully aware of the fact that he is a Republican. And these same relatives that will go and praise him will be the first ones to show dislike towards the other candidates, towards Rubio, towards Trump, towards Cruz. Only one of those I actually would not vote for under any circumstance. You know, it's one of those things where they are able to look past the R or the D and realize a political party does not mean someone is bad automatically. There are plenty of children who are brought up to be a certain way. I was brought up towards Democrats. I'll admit that. Which, you know, I've walked back from only because the way they are doing Bernie Sanders right now, and the way they are doing African Americans right now, as they've been doing for the last 40, 50 years, really ever since Johnson got out of office, there's no reason to stay with that party. And you know, you can argue some African Americans are socially liberal. Well, if those liberal views are on big government and they want that, and stay with the Democrats. If those are limited government, supporting of same-sex marriage, opposing the death penalty, it's pretty obvious which party to go with, because we have plenty of people on the Republican side who are that way. They're called Libertarians for the most part, although you still have some that won't fully embed themselves with that branding, even though I'm fully embracing it, because it's something that allows people to be accepting, at the same time have conservative values. You're almost both, but at the same time you're neither, because you are this mixture that is unique in its own way. And you have Democratic libertarians, Republican libertarians, and really that group, my group, of just this type of political ideology. They are the best individuals to, by best, I mean, I think they're the most open-minded. I think they are certainly, apart from independent voters, willing to cross over to either party at any given time. And I'm really grateful to call myself a libertarian because of that my view of that particular way they go about being members of parties. You know, it's just amazing to me that you see these Democratic candidates who will go around here, like Clinton, get these mothers of these murdered African American children, and after she gets the votes, just dumps them like dinner. And I don't think that's right. I don't think that's fair. And you know, you had Rand Paul, who was recently, I think a month ago, got rid of his presidential campaign. He went to Ferguson. He didn't have to do that. And I don't believe it was some attempt to build up political characteristics. You know, he went over there before this election cycle even began. You had Ted Cruz, who spoke to the mother of Trayvon Martin, and he expressed sympathy for her, and he did not have to do that. What I'm getting at is, you had Marco Rubio, who expressed sympathy with Black Lives Matter. He did not have to do that. So see, I don't believe any of these liberal claims or democratic claims that, and again, I don't associate liberalism with being evil. I have elements of liberalism in my social views, but those are more in the likelihood of John F. Kennedy and Robert F. Kennedy, not the opportunistic, calculating ways of President Obama and Hillary Clinton, where we first say, oh, we oppose same-sex marriage, and then walk back and claim that we were awoken at age 52 and 66, which is completely unrealistic. But it goes back to what I'm getting at, that you know, you have people on both sides that you like. I like Biden. I like Gore. I like the Kennedys on the Democratic side. On the Republican side, I like Cruz. I like Rubio. I like Rand Paul. I mean, it's as simple as that. I don't see what the problem with having people on both sides that you admire or that you like on at least a personal level. I don't see any problem with that. And even most politicians, I like them on a personal level because I don't know them on a personal level. Most people, unless they do something to me personally, people can insult me and I still won't really feel one type of way about them. It depends what the insult is, but most people I don't have some negative view of or really feel any kind of way about until they do something to me that actually makes me feel bad. Most people don't do that. And I genuinely believe I like most people because I don't have a bias towards anything about anyone in my view. I always try to get to know people. This has kind of been my little dissertation, and I hope you've enjoyed. It certainly has been fun kind of expressing this confusion I have on why people feel the need to associate one party with being evil and one party with being good. I think there's good on both sides, and I think there's been good on both sides for a long time. I think the Democrats have lost their way, at least now, and I'm seeing more of what I want on the Republican side. But you still have to keep an open mind. I don't believe all Democrats are bad, and I don't believe all Republicans are good. It just comes with the territory of needing to focus on the candidate as opposed to the party. And that's something most people should do. They need to focus on the candidate, not the party. I'm even getting tripped up on it myself right now. You can't just act as if GOP, oh no, not for me. That's ridiculous. I've explained before how members of my family feel, how I feel. So this is something to keep in mind. I think all of us should try to look beyond the party. I know I'm repeating myself, but I'm really appreciative if you made it this far. So thank you. Have a good day.